One, two, three. We're recording.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the S3 podcast. We don't really keep a track on the episodes. I think it's like 13 or 14 or something like that. But today we have a very special guest. We have Danny Check or Daniel Check or however you know him by.
Danny.
He owns the company PB Performance Products. He does a lot of chassis bracing and very performance-driven products for the ST platform, the Mazda platform. I think you're delving into Honda now, aren't you?
I've been trying. It's just hard to get the R&D time right now.
What are you offering products for?
So basically, I have the whole Scion lineup. A couple of Toyotas that basically were Scion. So like the Scion IM, that's now the Toyota IM, which is no longer the Toyota IM, and now the Toyota Corolla. So I have those, the CHR. Then I have the Mazda Speed 3, Mazda 3. I also have obviously the Ford lineup, which is kind of like where I've found my home. And I have the Nissan Juke somewhere in there too.
Do you really?
Yeah, dude, I love that car. I did it as a pet project.
I saw that on your Instagram because I didn't even know they made a Nismo Juke for the longest time.
Oh, yeah.
It's so sick.
They can shake parking lot, and one pulled up next to me and complimented my Focus, and I was like, "What is that?"
Dude, it's
a Juke Nismo.
It's so sick.
It's so weird because all of a sudden this car keeps coming up again. I was just doing, I know you're kind of a Mazda guy, but I was just doing a review on the Mazda CX-3, and I'm just like, I don't freaking get it. Like, I want to love it so much. Like, it's a head turner, man. It's a good looking car, but I'm like, it's slow and it doesn't have room. I can handle small if it's fast. I can handle slow if it's got some room, or it can tow stuff, or it can go off-road, but it can't do any of it.
My buddy and I always have this conversation with the CX-3. We're always like, it's like a really useless car, but we both love it. And I'm like, yeah. I'm a total functional guy. Like, everything is like track inspired. And I was like, but damn, if there was one car that I would like dump out on bags, it would be a CX-3. And I can't believe I'm saying that on a podcast, but like, I just feel like that would be the sickest build ever, and it'd just be like one of those weird show cars. But other than that, like, no purpose for that car.
The goofy little thing, it does look like the future. You know what I mean? Like, when you look at it, you're like, this is what I figured cars would look like by the time I was an adult. But yeah, anyway, it got me. I was sitting there in the review. I was like, can somebody please explain this whole segment? Because I just don't understand. We're taking away the fun hot hatches and we're replacing them with not fun, not functional small crossovers, except for the Juke, which is badass. The Nismo
which
they
got rid of now.
They don't do the Nismo, or they don't do the Juke at all?
I don't think they're doing the Juke anymore. I mean, someone will probably fact check me on that, but like, I think they replaced it with some really boring crossover. And like, not that,
I saw, yeah. Well,
like everything else nowadays.
You didn't know this was going to be about Jukes, huh? But yeah, I had that little Nismo 6-speed as a press car one time, and I was like, dude, this thing is kind of cool. Pointless, but at least cool. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of fun.
They're weird. They don't have a whole lot of power. They don't particularly handle well. But like, I just have this soft spot for them where it's like I want to play with them.
Yeah, they look like a frog and they're turbocharged. I mean,
the interior is rad. The seats,
I love it.
But
they're comfortable too.
The back seat has no room though. It drops off in the back, and you got it was frustrating with the child. That's why I don't understand these things, because it's like pointless crossover, right? And they're not really much cheaper than the size up, than this, than the mid-size, and they don't really get better gas mileage, a little bit, but...
The Juke, when I went to go buy my Speed 3 in 2013, the Juke was like $5,000 more than my Speed 3 was out the door. And I was like, why? Like, I'm going to buy a Speed 3. Like... Yeah.
I don't get it, man.
Yeah, neither do I.
I blame y'all millennials for screwing everything up.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I never fit with the mindset of my peers. Like, I don't know. Everything I've done has always been like either a generation back or like 2 generations back. So
that's cool. No, I dig it.
Anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, it goes into cars like the ST, because why would you buy? I hate to just be ripping on the CX-3, but price point is like the same. The freaking Focus has got more room, way more power, close to as good as gas mileage, and is priced about the same. Did I already say that? I don't know. It's priced about the same. So, like, I don't understand why Ford is taking away those kind of cars and replacing it with an eco sport, which is anything but the name sport. You know?
Yeah.
It's relatively like a Focus.
It's eco, yeah, but it ain't sport. You know, like, so.
It's not even Focus. It's its own breed. You should have given it its own name. Like, let it exist on its own. But
so now that Ford has kicked us all in the dick and taken away all their cool cars except for the Mustang and the Raptor, how does that affect you at TB Performance? Like, I mean, like, because you're kind of pioneering. And all right, so for those of you guys that don't, give a shit about ST stuff or don't own one, like, it's a cult. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really is.
It's a pretty savvy enthusiast overall that's buying these things. They kind of know what's up. They know what's going on. And so it's got this cult following. There's companies like you and JST and these guys that are like kind of kicking ass, serving this small little. I mean, because every Ford guy, it's kind of the counterculture, like everybody messes with the Hondas and the Nissans and shit. And so the Ford guys, it's an instant brotherhood. So even though it's small and super niche, there has been companies that have been able to kind of like get a footing and make a living in this, Anyway, you're one of those guys. Oh, and quick aside, just in case you're like, what the hell do they keep saying TB? Okay, so like he's making chassis braces and throughout from what? I don't know what you call them, but from up front, underneath, to traction bars, all the way to the booty boot camps in the back, which we were just making fun of. Nobody ever wants to say that, but that's like the trunk brace and everything. And really, what did you said you saved like what, a second and a half at what track or something? What?
Yeah, so we shaved like I think it was like a second, maybe a second and a half. Same driver, same car, same conditions as 1 week after another. Just installing the trunk brace, the lower trunk brace, not the booty boot camp, but the trunk brace on the Fiesta ST. And like that's kind of it. That's kind of one of those like things that stuns a lot of people because like a brace should not be yielding that kind of gain, but the Fiesta ST and Focus ST chassis have a tendency to respond really well to bracing. And so yeah, we shaved a ton of time off of it's like a 45 second track for a fast driver, 52 for like a normal person.
Which track is that?
It's Adams Motorsport Park. It's kind of like it's cool. It's a little go-kart track, and it's like this family-owned and like operated go-kart track that they open up for drifting and racing for cars, and like it's like its own community. It's like all these super like hood rat cars that show up and stuff. Like I was right at home in my MR2 when I rolled up there, and like it's a cool place, and that's where a lot of the local guys that get big into racing, that's where they make their start is at Adams.
Well, and yeah, the killer thing with your stuff is, because the STs are new cars, it doesn't void warranty.
Yeah, exactly. A Ford tech will never get mad about they may get frustrated that the oil hits the traction bar kind of funny when you do an oil change, but they're never going to avoid a warranty because it's a chassis. The chassis never needs to be warrantied on a car. I mean,
I see it like literally almost daily on like the Ford ST pages. Somebody's like, I just picked this one up, man. What should I do first? And everybody's like, TB Performance. You're not going to void anything. You're not stressing the car anymore. Like it's not like you're putting big turbos and stuff like that. You're just using what you got and using it better. So
exactly.
But yeah. Anyway. Okay. So yeah. Back to the Ford kicking us in the dick thing. So like, what do you do? Like, what's your game plan? I mean.
So yeah, like when that announcement came down, I was hanging out with my dad. And my dad used to own a business, and he's got a really good business mind. And I was like, Dad, like, what do I do, man? I've spent what, like 4 years in this market, and like this is my home. And he was like, oh, you're gonna be fine, don't worry about it. There's enough of those cars made. You're gonna continue on selling those parts. And he's right. Like, I look at my MR2, like there's 2s RS, there used to be EMS powered, there's ATS Racing, there's all these companies that still exclusively make MR2 parts, and they they still exist and they still thrive because that niche is their niche. I do plan on diversifying in the future, but that's a normal part of my business as it was anyways. Like I got real big in the Scions. I did a ton of development on the Scions,
Right.
like on the TC2, XB2 IM chassis. I did a ton of R&D on it, and then they cut the Scions, and it was like, that's no problem. I've already finished my R&D. I'll move on to the next car, which happened to be the Fiesta and Focus ST. So I'm going to probably diversify into the new Subaru WRX chassis and STI chassis, and I also want to get in on the Mustang. But both of those are, from a logistic standpoint of chassis bracing, they're very different than a front-wheel drive car. So there's some R&D that I've been working on and kind of figuring out how that chassis interacts and reacts versus a front-wheel drive chassis.
That's awesome.
So how do you decide that you want to get into chassis bracing? Where
it's the weirdest thing, like I was a kid, and like I grew up watching like Monster Garage and American Chopper, and I knew I wanted to be a fabricator. And then I had like the grades and everything to do like engineering, and I don't really fit with school, so like I didn't like, I always got kicked out of classes and stuff because like a teacher would like get an argument with me, and never me getting in an argument with the teacher. It was always them getting an argument with me. And so I get thrown out of the class, and I was sitting there one day. I got really into cars in 2009, and I was sitting in class in 2010, and I wanted to go home and work on my car, and I was in this geology class, and I was like, man, I'm screwing up. Like, I want to do what I love. And then, like, 6 months later, I'd been designing parts for everything from skateboards to bikes to stuff since I was a little kid. And so I started designing parts for my car to race with a buddy up in the mountains by my house in Duluth. And I started like getting a lot faster, and my braces were obviously helping. And then one day I was like, I'm at this dead end job. I hate everything. So you know what? Screw it. I'm going to throw caution to the wind. I'm going to start my business. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I started it like in 2011, and 6 months later I quit my job, and I've been full-time TB Performance Products since October 2011.
Hell yeah. That's cool, man. I admire the balls to do it. Like, with S3, I was forced into the situation. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, you're laid off, so you're either going to call your old boss, or you're going to get unlaid off, or you're going to, like, somehow, it ended up that, our old boss offered us the company. But yeah, I was forced, but that's pretty cool that you did it under your own will and didn't just put it off till tomorrow and next year, and because so many people do that, and so many people miss out. Like, how old are you right now?
I'm 27. I'll be 28 in like 1 month. So
yeah, like that mid-20s or whatever, like where you're at that fork in the road where it's like, what's it gonna be, dude? Are you going to go the way that everybody goes? Or are you going to go the way that you want to go? And the thing is, a lot of people don't realize when you're 25, like, you're allowed to fuck up. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
Like you could have started this and totally screwed up and missed rent and had to go get a job.
Everyone is expecting it to happen.
And it's fine because he's just a damn kid anyway. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, I always preach that in the magazine. It's like, dude, like, your 20s is that point to like go for broke, because you're setting like the habits of your life. Are you going to play it safe? Or are you going to go, whatever, kind of jumping in the deep end, or however you want to say it? But
it's the funniest thing because like as I've aged, like people were always like, oh wow, it's like it's so nuts that you went out and like took that risk, and I was like, nah, it wasn't a big deal. And then like now that I'm like getting a little older and stuff, I'm like looking back, I'm like, if I was presented the same opportunity that I was presented back in 2011, I would be like, too risky now.
Yeah.
And it's so weird. Like it's for me like 20 through 25, I was just like, dude, just throw it all on black. Let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? Like, I'm gonna be set back 4 years, like 5 years. Okay, whatever. I have a crazy experience that like nobody else is ever gonna be able to have. And I gotta run with it.
Yeah.
So you said back in 2011 you started TB Performance, right?
Yeah.
How long did it take before you were finally like, okay, this is going somewhere, I'm doing okay? Because I'm sure if you're just like, you know what, fuck this, I'm going to go out there and do what I love, I know that it doesn't come easy. I know that. What was that like from starting with nothing to where you are? I mean, you're having to keep an inventory now
Yeah.
because you're selling stuff so fast. So how was the in between?
So basically the start of it was really rough. My dad and I had really bad conflicts. Like I used to always say, like we were like the Tuttles in American Chopper. Like we would just get in these screaming matches in the garage, and he hated my business, like absolutely hated it. And like when I started it, he went. I used a lot of his tools. He was a body man and a mechanic for most of his life, and so like I was using a lot of his tools. And I came outside one day, and the toolbox was locked, and the everything was dropped over it, so I couldn't get access to it. And I was just like, all right. And so I went out and I spent the last of my paycheck to get the tools that I needed, which was like a sledgehammer that I still use every day, and like some other like some basic tools. And then about 6 months after that, I went and I started a shop. I actually was renting a unit in my town, and so I went down there and I did that, and it just, I mean, it's 2011. This is the height of the Great Recession, and man, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any orders. I didn't have any tools. I didn't have anything. And there were a lot of days. I think the longest I went was about 2 or 3 days where I just didn't eat because I didn't have any food. And like, my dad, like at the time, I'm a very picky eater, and so he would only buy tuna, and all we had at the house was tuna, and I will not eat fish, and so.
You live by the ocean, man.
Right. But so he had that, and so I would go to work, and my next door neighbor, thankfully, is a really nice guy. His name's Tito. He owns a custom upholstery shop, and he was always like, yeah, you look so hungry. And so I'd go and I'd like pull staples on his like seats and stuff so that he could reupholster them, and I do that for hours so that he would buy me lunch, and I just did that over and over and over. And I remember there was this one time my friends came to the shop, and Javi and Kyle were sitting there with me, and they were like, "Let's go get food." And I was like, "All right," and we went. And they go, they're like, "What are you gonna order?" It's my turn to go up and order, and I was like, I'm good. And they're like, why not? And I was like, I don't have enough money. Like, I got to make rent. So,
Yeah.
and so like my buddy Kyle pulled me aside, and he looked at me. He was like this weird big brother. And he like looked at me and he was like, he's like, I'm gonna buy you a burger. And he was like, but I want you to know I don't have any sympathy for you. You've chosen this life. You get to sleep where the bed you made.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not looking for sympathy, And he's like, all right, cool. And we hung out for the rest of the night and stuff. But that always like sat with me because it was like I never was like looking for that sympathy. Like I made that choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't grow up in poverty. I didn't have bad cards dealt to me. I chose a really ridiculously risky and stupid choice. So it was a really hard like start, and then the middle was kind of like I could pay my bills. I was able to have a Speed 3. I moved my shop back into my parents' house, and I was paying them rent instead of paying the landlord rent. And so I was doing that, and I wanted to buy a house, so I started saving up a ton of money to buy a house, and yeah, I mean, so the middle was I just kind of could make ends meet, and then I got into the ST world, and it was like that was where it hit. Like I got into a group of people that like not only understood what a chassis brace was, but desired it. These were people that were coming. I found a lot of people were coming out of the Subaru world, coming out of the Evo world, coming out of the Speed world. And so it was this like mashup of all the industries that I was very familiar with, and all the like intellect from those cars all translated into it. So the customer base was already educated into my products, and at that same time, my skill set had gotten to a point where I was able to produce significantly more complex parts than before. And so I was able to give the community what they wanted. And it's been the craziest thing as it's grown. My ability and what I've learned to do and fabricate has like gone right along with the growth of the ST. And so like, I got into building downpipes, and it was like, I finally learned how to do that kind of work. I was able to jump into that. And then like now with the crash bar that I just released for the Focus ST, that unit's like all the thinking design work and all that is all the years of fabrication that piled up. And so, yeah, that midsection was a weird section. And then like one day it just was like, I'm free falling into this market, and it's, I've never looked back after that point.
That's awesome. I remember similar situations in the early days of S3. It was like I remember at one point being in like the grocery store, and I had a box of like the grocery store brand macaroni, which was like 60 cents. I was like, okay, I put it in my little basket, you know. And I remember walking somewhere else and being like, I don't need that, you know. Like, so, and I go and put it back, and then I keep going somewhere else. I'd be like, but I could make 2 meals out of that, you know, like,
yeah.
And literally, and I remember sitting there thinking, I am in this freaking grocery aisle, like contemplating box macaroni. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was like, this is bad, dude. This is bad.
It's total character building.
Like, yeah, I was gonna say, if you guys if anybody listening is in that situation,
dude,
it
it's
sucks.
Worth it.
But yeah, I was gonna say it sucks, but it's also like the good old days are happening to you right now. Like, and you feel everything more when you're that desperate. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you just, I don't know, you want it more. It makes you more passionate about what you're doing. People are always like, you know, well, how does S3 survive? You know, because it's a print magazine. It's a more and more digital world. And I'm like, because we're shitty businessmen. Like, cause if we were smart, we would have quit a long time ago. But we just keep doing it out of just pure stubbornness. Yeah.
It's the whole, like, won't quit thing, you know what I mean? Like, that's exactly it.
If
like,
you literally will not quit, eventually you'll get somewhere, you know?
Yep. You just keep throwing things at the wall until something sticks, and when it sticks, you just run at that thing.
that, yeah. No, yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of, it brought me back for a second. I forgot about that until you were telling your story.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, another thing I was just taking notes on as you were talking about kind of the, you know, the WRX mindset and the ST mindset. And these guys are kind of performance-driven guys. And they try and study the chassis. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the, I don't want to say the younger guys, but a lot of the guys maybe messing with the more seen cars, they don't. Basically, what I'm getting at is in a photo-driven world of Instagram and Facebook and all that shit, do you have trouble, like, because your parts aren't Instagram parts. I mean,
before we get into this,
yeah,
I want to bounce off of that I was really impressed with you, because before I even became associated with ST or anything like that, I told Denny this over text message, but when I first got my Focus ST, well over a year ago, probably pushing a year and a half ago, I was looking. The first thing I bought before 1,000 miles was a Roush catback, and then I wanted to do a Catalyst downpipe. So I posted in a forum called ST Drivers on Facebook, and I said, dude, what do you guys recommend? And they said, Danny, TB Performance. So fling, Danny, I think Danny actually shot me a message on Facebook and was like, hey, man.
I see you do that all the time. You're like, hey, dude, if you need anything, let me know, man.
You're looking for. I said, okay, cool. So, you know, I followed him on Instagram or whatever. So for over a year, not only have I had his Catalyst downpipe, but I've been following him on social media. And you hate seen cars. You were like, if you do not track your car and if you do not win, I'm not giving you anything.
Oh, really?
That's a funny thing, because his Facebook bio, his Instagram bio, everything associated with CJ Performance says, do not ask me to sponsor. I love it.
It's like, I'm not kidding. Like, I get asked, like, before I had that, I was getting asked, like, daily, sometimes hourly, for like, hey man, I've got 10,000 followers on Instagram. Will you sponsor my car? And I was like, yeah, what you got done to your car? And they'd be like, oh, you know, I've got an MBRP catback, I've got an MBRP downpipe, and I've got a CPE motor mount, and I've got a, you know, pick a brand front mount. And I'd be like, okay, you know, so do you race? No, but, you know, I got a bunch of followers on Instagram. And I'm like, dude, like, that's cool and all, like, but you have a very generic build, and you're not passionate. Like, if you're passionate, you'd be out beating the hell out of your car like the rest of us. You know, go do that. That's where that's where the money's at. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like surrounding myself with people who care about how many Instagram likes they get. I care about people who are like how much they love what they do. You know,
so
what I mean?
It's that bad, huh? In the modern world, because like with the magazine, I don't deal with that, but I see a lot of our advertisers get driven up the wall, like by people just. Like, will you sponsor me? I have this many followers.
It's actually funny. I'm really glad I can finally make a public mention of this.
Yeah.
So if you go on my website, in the contact us, there's a contact us and sponsorship request. If you get a chance, go through it. Okay, this is like my buddy and I sat down. O'Brien McQuaid, I'm sure you're familiar with him. Yeah, so Obi is like my best friend, right? And so Obi and I were like, I got a request for it. And he's like, let's go fix your website so that people can ask to be sponsored. And so Obi's like the biggest internet troll I've ever experienced in my life. And so he set this thing up with me. We go through and we edit the website, and it's like, it's got like the normal questions of like, what mods do you have? What shows do you go to? All that kind of stuff, which puts people into this like false state of security. And then you get lower to the bottom, and it's like, describe your car. And it's like, hashtag stance life, hashtag built not bought, and like all these like trendy like things. And like, none of them matter. I don't care. I just laugh at which one they select. And then further down, it's like, name the president of Nicaragua, or the motto of Nicaragua. And then it's like, who's the president of like some like country in Africa? And then it's like all these ridiculous questions. And the whole reason is just so that we can like, I laugh, like half of the motto one is half of those things in Spanish are like, my car is slow, I'm stupid, like stuff like that. And so like I have all these things on there just to see, and like half the time the person will just pick one of them, and they'll pick the one that makes fun of their car. And like I don't even respond to them. Like I just get these sponsorship requests and I laugh at it and I move forward. And then it loops on itself when you submit it, and it says, please read the FAQ, we're no longer selecting sponsorship vehicles. And in my contact us, it says there's no sponsorship vehicles. And so it's like, I bet you wish you would have read the FAQ first before you wasted your time.
Oh, man.
And it's like, I've gotten like, I had this one customer, I'm sure a lot of people get pissed off by it, and like, fair enough, I understand. But I had this one customer that responded to me, and he was like, hey man, he's like, you got me good. And I was like, that was all his email was. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, your sponsorship us, that is the funniest thing ever. And I think I gave him like 10% off his order because he was like super chill about it, and like obviously he was a cool guy because he thought it was fun. Like took the time out of his day to tell me. So yeah, it's horrible. People want everything for free, and like I got a couple thousand followers. Cool, dude. Like,
well, yeah, it's funny because me and Mike, the other owner of S3, are plotting, I guess, if you want to call it that, to do a little podcast on that kind of thing. Because I was talking to the guy that I ride mountain bikes with, one of the guys, he works for Yokohama. He tracks up LS Turbo 240 and stuff. And we were talking about sponsorship. And it's like, where is this going? Because, like, and again, I'm kind of giving away this podcast that we're going to do next week. But it's like, where's it going to go? Like, people, like, reputable companies are no longer sponsoring people based on their talent or innovation or possible performance or anything like that. It's strictly, how many followers do you have? And how many of your followers can we like leech onto, and it's just like, I mean, that's cool. I get it. Like these guys are desperately trying to like get exposure, but like, what's it going to do to the culture? Like there's not going to be any, we're going to hit this wall because somebody that's just internet cool, but maybe not as talented. I mean, you're only going to get so far before.
I think that's a real problem though, because marketing wise, you're no longer grabbing the people that are passionate. You're grabbing about the people who can sell themselves well. Yeah. And that's one of the things with my business is I never really wanted to be the sellout. Like I never wanted to be the guy who did that. Like I always cared about staying true to like my roots, which like TB is track built performance. Like this is all motivated for you to go fast, and if you're not down with that, like you can go buy someone else's parts that are cheaper, but they don't have the time in it. And I think that's kind of where we're going, is we're not really so worried about like the industry is not so worried about actually making cars fast anymore. It's about just selling products that someone on Instagram can go tell other people to go buy. And I don't know, it's kind of sad to me. Like that's not, I got into this because I wanted to make a fast car. Like, that was the whole point.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, I've been messing with whatever import since like 96, and it, maybe I was just a kid, but it feels like, from 96 to 03 or whatever, like it was peaking, man. It was like innovation after innovation. Just because you bought something last year, it was like obsolete the next year, and there was all this new stuff coming out, freaking, all this cool shit. And like I feel like now, not only has it gotten stagnant, But then you have the internet where you can buy used parts from across the country. So you got scavengers, and really you don't have a reason to tell them not to scavenge in a lot of cases because, I mean, let's be honest, like a freaking, I don't know, exhaust from 2003 looks about the damn same as a new one. Or
that's one of the issues I've had is like with my products, like they're not a consumable, you know what I mean? And like I designed them to be like bulletproof parts.
Yeah.
And so like I had this one customer that like he messages me and he takes a ton of time, like I mean like hours that I've spent talking to this guy about parts, and he'll go out and he'll just buy it used. And it's like it's like I can't blame him. Like, hey dude, props. Like I've done that before myself, but like but it's one of those things. If I'm always like, well, what can I do to like encourage new purchases? And like the only thing I can do is like basically keep revising my parts with technology that I'm learning. But it's like that's not something I can just whip up one day. Like I actually have to I'll have a midnight like, oh my god, this is what I got to do, and I run out to the shop and get it done. But that only happens when it happens. You know what I mean? And it's hard. It's really hard.
So are you afraid that it might get to that point where you're going to have so many mid-chassis braces out there that people are going to start buying new?
Kind
people
of a little
buying new?
A little bit of anxiety on it, but at this point, I mean, God, I've got thousands of parts out there, and a lot of people when they go to like sell their car, they just like some things like if the like powder coat is if the powder coat doesn't look right, they'll just kind of chuck it in the trash and move on. And especially with like niche products like chassis braces, they just they're done with the car, they're done with the scene, they move on. And so I haven't seen too bad of an issue with it. The one that's bad is with the downpipes, because my downpipes I really over engineered those downpipes, and so they're gonna last forever. And so those things.
Looked at mine since I put it on, and you.
Dude, I'll bet it looks almost exactly like it did, like a little more discolored, but like it like. And with those, it's like those pop up on the used market, and what like kind of stings a bit on it is like the resale on my downpipes will so it's a $350 part shipped. I've seen them sell for $325 used with like 30,000 miles on it.
Wow.
And I'm like, damn. So like, it's cool that my parts are holding the value, but like, that's kind of sucks for me. Like how am I going to compete with myself?
Yeah.
It's kind of an issue, but I mean, by and large, it doesn't seem to impact the aftermarket community too terribly much.
Yeah.
And you're really doing good by innovating on new platforms. Like you said, you started out with the ones before, and then you ended up on the ST platform where it really took off. When did you decide to hit the ST platform? What year?
I think it was 2014. I think it was like March 2014. But I started with the Fiesta base model when it came out. So I was really drawn to that car. I had a friend who had an automatic transmission Fiesta sedan, and he wanted to make a race car out of it. And I was like, all right, man, whatever. I'll make your dreams happen. And so we put all these braces on it, and like the dude kicked the shit out of a bunch of Mazda Miatas that were like turboed and shit at autocross. And like he subsequently became one of my best friends. And anyway, he like that Fiesta, when I started moving on, and I was like, I need to find another car. They cut the TC. And I was like, well, the Fiesta was always kind of something I liked, and there's a market that already is semi-familiar with me. So I jumped on the Fiesta, and then like it didn't take much more than a couple of months before people were like, the Focus ST is the numbers car as far as how many were produced and how much are being modified. And I started laughing because like my original R&D was Mazda Speed 3s, which for the average person, they don't know this, but that's a Ford C chassis. So the chassis is almost identical on the front end. And so I was like, this traction bar that the Speed community never believed worked, I'm going to try it with the Focus ST guys. So I tried with Focus ST guys, and they latched onto it. And now it's funny because now the Speed guys are like, oh, that part works because you have all this info. And I'm like, yeah, but like 5 years ago, you guys told me I was a nut job and that doesn't do anything. So it's kind of a long-winded explanation of how I selected getting into that market. But almost all my markets that I've gotten into were because I had a deep passion for it. So like when I it's gonna sound weird, but like I saw the Kia Forte coupes back in like 2012, and I was like,
Yeah.
that's a hot little car, you know? Like I can see what's going on there. And so I jumped in and I started building parts for them, and like that community like really embraced me, and like we took off with it. Unfortunately, that community was really short lived, and I had a vendor that just like went on this total like character assassination rampage. Which anyway, that's another story. But I left that market after that, and but that's a car that I had passion for. The Fiesta I had passion for. The Focus I had passion for. The Speed I had passion for. The Juke I do. Like nobody makes parts for the Juke because companies don't see money in it. But like I make parts for the Juke because I'm like, no, there's somebody out there that's like me that bought a Juke, and like they're gonna want to do something, and it's my obligation as a fabricator to make sure that they have access to those parts. Like
Right.
so I won't discontinue it, even though I sell like 2 of those every year.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'll probably have a Juke Nismo one day when you can scoop
Hey,
one
let
up
me
for
know,
not
because,
much.
let me know. I'll fly out there and I'll
It's
help
just-
you do some ignorant things to that
It's
car.
that kind of car. It's like it's the same mentality as the Fiesta, but like even more so, where you're just like, I'm gonna make this damn thing cool, and I'm gonna make people like see it the way I see it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. What's that?
Do you think that your success on the ST platform and you being as popular as you are on it comes from the fact that you got onto it so early?
I'm like, first off, it's kind of weird. Like I don't see myself as like popular on the platform, so it's like it's strange to hear that. Like I still like kind of feel like I'm a real like nobody, just trying to make ends meet. But I mean, thanks for the compliment. That's like it's a huge deal.
No, yeah,
but,
that's just because I think you're a humble guy. Like you don't see it the way that you don't see it as the reality, basically. You know what I mean? Like, but
Take it back to what you said earlier on ST drivers on Facebook. There's like thousands of people on that forum, and your name probably got recommended at least 200 times.
I think it's because of my like won't stop, like can't stop, won't stop attitude with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't like it's annoying. I'm always on Facebook, but I'm always like trolling through trying to find like, because like my big thing is like there's a Jay-Z line that like Jay-Z's kind of been like my giant thing with business, and there's this Jay-Z line where it's like I treat my first like my last and my last like my first, and so like I always trying to remember like that I've been broke from this business, and I know that I always had to hustle hard to like get known. And so like I make sure to treat like every customer and every potential customer as like that is the same thing as my first customer, even though that's the most recent. Like this is, I got to make sure I can help him. So I think that is part of it. And then the other part is a little bit of the timing. Timing into a market's kind of important. I came in right when like the like bell curve for the Focus and Fiesta, like it was like just starting to hit that sweet spot. And people were really starting to take it seriously. And then at the same time, there wasn't a whole ton of aftermarket support. And so it was one of those things of like I could present a product that was warranty friendly, that was cheap, that performed well, so it kind of grabbed the market at the right time to where people were drawn to that kind of stuff. Where like right now, I'm competing with people that are saying stuff like, what you should do to your car is a limited slip differential and a big turbo. And it's
Right.
like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm not going to
say, but
yeah, I'm definitely not saying you shouldn't do that. Like, that's badass. Like,
Yeah.
but it's hard to compete with numeric numbers of like that makes 550 horsepower on the dyno, and my traction bar is something that's intrinsic and is feel based, and I can't really give you any data outside of it feels awesome when you've
Yeah.
installed it and trust me on it. Like,
yeah.
so yeah, a little bit of timing on that one, and a little bit of like, 3 a.m. trolling Facebook while I'm doing whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that the ST community, they just get it. Like, that's why we did we went after it. And we were doing the Ford attack, and we, it looks on the surface like Ford sponsored S3, and we went and got $1 Mustang and $1 Fiesta. That's not what happened. Like,
Yeah.
what happened is we drove the cars because we get press cars, and we were like, holy shit. Like, if you put tape over the Ford freaking logo on the steering wheel, I would swear it was some damn import. You know, this thing reminds me of the way cars felt like around, you know, the turn of the century. You know, yeah, exactly. It reminds, like, the Fiesta is the most 90s freaking import ever. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It really
is.
shouldn't be legal. Like, that's how I feel about it. Like, it is just like, it's one of those things like my MR2 sure as hell would never be legal currently.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, it's too properly fun.
Yeah.
And like SST is like, they took everything that made that car culture in the 90s and early 2000s. They took all that, condensed it into a thing and labeled it the lamest car possible, Ford Fiesta. And then gave it out.
Just to run off the posers. Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is when the car first came out, I was obsessed. I wanted one. I was drawing like little diagrams of what it would look like and stuff. And then I put it out of my mind. You know, life went on for a few years. And then it came back. I had to have it. I went over to JJ, which is Athens Ford. He's a Ford dealer, but he's in the car community, you know, and so everybody in Georgia kind of buys their STs from him. And he had the red one. And it was right after Mike, my business partner, went and bought the red Mustang, right? Which I kind of wanted. I had Mustang fever. And I was like, dude, if you don't go get this car, like, I'm going to go get it. I'm going to get all these parts through the magazine. It's going to hurt so bad to watch me make all this power. And he went. And he's like the most responsible bastard in the world. And he went and he bought the car. And I was kind of like, you know, frozen in my tracks. And I was like, son of a bitch. All right, I'm going to beat you with a Fiesta now. And so it just so happened that JJ had a red used one, you know. And I went and drove it. And it was immediately like my freaking 97 front wheel drive Eclipse again. I was just, it's like motor, or it's not even motor, it's turbo and whatever, seats. And that was it, man. And it was just like so elemental and so awesome. I was like, dude, I got a freaking hat. I don't know, man. And that's why we did the whole Ford Attack. It was a genuine thing. You know, we saw potential in the enthusiasts. You know, like we see a lot of bullshit, you know, like we do a lot of Hondas and we do a lot of Nissans, and these cars are 20, 25 years old now, and we see that scavenger mentality we were talking about, and the used parts and the JDM obsession, and we see how all that stuff is basically imploding the aftermarket. You know, like it makes it really hard on a guy like you when you're competing with freaking OEM JDM shit that's getting containered over on the slow boat, and then you got all this used parts in the US, and so we were like, damn, dude, like these Focuses, it's like a renaissance. It's like Hondas were in the 90s. You know what I mean? It was like this stuff. These guys have jobs. They're buying new cars. They're commuting in them. So, like, they're keeping them on the street. They're buying new parts for these new cars. They understand what performance is. They're not, like, too caught up on freaking Instagram and bags and neutered-ass cars that drive like an abortion. You know, and
couldn't have said it better.
We were like, dude, there's something here. And not only that, but we were watching, like, people were starting to swap these EcoBoosts into other cars, and because they put EcoBoosts into freaking Ford Escapes, like, the prices were low, and it was like, dude, okay, this is the Honda thing all over again. Like, we got to get behind this. And so we did, and then Ford pulled the rug out from everybody, and I'm still salty. I
kind of feel like they're like I don't have any inside information here. This is just the ramblings of.
I was gonna ask you this, dude. Hold on. My next question was, in your whatever unfiltered opinion, do you think they're gonna bring it back?
Oh hell yeah!
Oh, is this a hiatus or is this like gone?
So I got two hypotheses on this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm also the dude that has like a bug out bag upstairs and like the economy's gonna crash. Buy gold, buy. Like so, like you know,
like buried
take
money
this with a grain of salt. Anyone that's listening to this,
yeah.
But my personal opinion is there's two things. One, it may have been a way to like rejuvenate that market. Is to they're still selling new STs. So there was a massive inventory of these cars. And so it may have been a way to dump STs and where a buyer isn't like, I'll just wait 6 more months and get the next generation.
Right.
And it may have been one of those things, or it may be genuinely a logistics thing with China and all the trade crap. I don't know. I'm not an econ major. That's my girlfriend. It may have been that, but I do feel like there will be a revival of it. And the other option is the second this economy takes any kind of a little dip. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have a great recession again, but we're statistically due for a recession within now to a couple of years from now. So when that happens, are you really going to be buying a F-150 pickup truck, or are you going to be looking at the Ford Fiesta?
I got a press release today, as a matter of fact, that said gas is the highest now that it's been in 4 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's doing in Southern California. I can only imagine it's freaking astronomical. But like,
I don't even look at the numbers on it. I just I'm not even kidding. Like it just sucks. So I just like, we have this stupid gas tax on everything right now. Like we have like 4 different like excise taxes on our gas, and state's out of control. But
yeah,
that's neither here nor there. I'll save that for a libertarian political rant one day.
Yeah.
But
it's a mess,
but, yeah,
but you got the beach.
Cool. That's great. I can't put a downpipe on my car without getting arrested.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, does the California cops, I know that they come down hard on like the Honda guys and the swap guys and all that. What about rolling around in a modified Focus?
I had a 2013 Mazda 3. I've always been a fan of the whole like keep it clean and simple on the outside, with the exception of this thing. But like my Speed 3 was like, it was bone stock. I had a lip on it finally one day. And that was the extent of the exterior on it. I kept a stock catback, but I was full bolt-ons otherwise. I was front mount, downpipe, high pressure fill pump internals, 3-inch HTTP intake, like professionally tuned by Stratified. And in doing that, I never got screwed with once. I was pulled over for speeding one time, and the guy never even like said anything. And I had an HKS SSQ at the time on, and he never said anything to me. But at the same time, it was a brand new car. I was in a button up. I looked nice and like presentable, not like how I normally look, which is kind of like a bum. And then, it's a clean car. I think a lot of the grief comes from when you have like, a ratty old car, which is unfortunate because those are badass cars. But like, if you got the, drilled holes in your muffler and it sounds like a swarm of bees behind you, those are the things that get you. If you cut your exhaust off, you'll get it. Window tint's like immediately like, you're gonna end up with your hood popped.
Yeah, because your probable cause rolling down the road.
Exactly. And that's exactly how I refer to it. Like when customers ask me, I'm like, just don't be rolling probable cause. You know what I mean? Like, just if you don't, like keep your license plate on the front. Don't give them any reason, and like you won't. And then obviously, like always hit them with the yes sir, no sir. Be nice, courteous, and don't threaten them, and you'll be okay. But like I do worry about my MR2 because my MR2 is like it's catless. There's no EGR. There's no EVAP. I probably shouldn't be admitting to all this on something that's going to be public. It's obviously a motor swap on it, and so it's like none of that is carb compliant. None of it ever can be carb compliant. There's no way back now. And it's it's a red mid-engine sports car that makes a shit ton of noise. And so I worry about that one quite frequently. But like, I have like a system of friends in California. Like we have smog checkpoints on the road, like DUI checkpoints, but for smog.
Yeah.
And like, so I constantly update stuff where it's like, hey, Rancho California Road, Temecula, smog checkpoint right next to Albertsons. Anyone modified, get out of the way. And like, I'll tag people that like work in that area and be like, hey.
So what do they do? What happens if you roll up there and you don't have a cat? Do they like impound the car, or do they say, all right, look, here's your thing, get it fixed? And
there's a couple of things like. I'm not an expert on this. I can't give legal advice or anything, but like supposedly you can tell them to piss off. And be like, I gotta get to work. Sorry, gotta go. Like I smogged my car a year ago, and it's every 2 years, so I gotta go. But normally what they do is they like point at you. They'll like they pick out basically what looks like a modified car, and they say, get up here, and they run you on the dyno. And if you don't pass, they hit you with a ref ticket, like right then and there, and you have to go to a state referee, which is it's like a trader. You know what I mean? Like one of the guys that was all into modified cars and stuff. That he works for the state now.
Freaking narc.
Yeah, he puts it in every modified car guy. All it was some dude that got the shit beat out of him over and over and over because he had a slow car. And
so he walks over there and goes, "That's a B18, whatever." Exactly. It's not an original
B16
motor for
swap
this
that
car.
Thing, and you can't have that. Like, so that's his job.
California, come on, man.
Yeah, like really, we have we have gang problems, like we have opioid problems here, and we're worried about like, oh, this guy's got a catless exhaust system.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
see, I always thought in a roundabout, unofficial way, maybe it was a way to check up on the gang type of shit. You know what I mean? It's just because, you see a couple of dudes rolling in a modified car, they're up to no good the second you look at them. And so they're like, well, that car doesn't look legal. Let's see what's going on here.
Yeah,
But yeah, I never really knew, like, if you're nice and polite, do they say, all right, man, nice car, have a nice day? Or do they go, hey, let's screw your
I've
life?
had,
I mean, dude, like
I've
where I
had,
live, I don't have emissions. Like I have nothing. Like,
must be nice.
yeah, I mean, I just, the
Yeah,
thought never occurs to me. I mean,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, we have like that the whole electric cutout that I used to sell for the Focus ST. That's based off of like California mindset of like if you want to go fast, you're gonna at some point need a free flowing exhaust, but the only way around it in California is to electric cutout. You know what I mean? Where you're like cops come and flip the switch, and you're quiet, and then like oh okay, some Honda wants to race me, dump it and just like blow it right off the turbo, and go blow the doors off of some car, and then back to being a good guy. So
That's
like
funny.
it's a real thing that you think about here, and like
Yeah.
a lot of the whole like OEM plus style thing that people have been doing, which has hurt the market a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes, I think, from like the California mindset of like we got to keep this where it looks like it's OEM, it's legit, and I'm not going to get screwed with by a cop because a cop's not going to open the. If you have like a giant, like CPE intake,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not Ford. But if you've got like a green filter in your, okay, whatever, no big deal. Or you got a
Yeah.
front mount that's blacked out, okay, not a big deal. But if you've got the cut through front mount that's hanging out the front and stuff, like that's where you start getting screwed with.
Yeah.
Is
Man.
it in SoCal right now? Because like here on the East Coast, I'm seeing everything on Facebook about how cops are cracking down on any and every modified car, especially in Southern California. Is that as bad as people are making it out?
Nah. Like, I mean, granted, I live in Temecula. It's a like very like middle class suburban, like it's a bedroom community. I'm not in like Los Angeles or San Diego where this is a different story. But by and large, I know a lot of people that are straight piped. I know a lot of people that have vent atmosphere blow off valves, and we all continue our life. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's as bad, but it is. It's there. You know what I mean? You sign up for it. You know what you're getting into. You know that the chances are you keep your stock parts. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you
It's
handle
just
that?
cat and mouse, pretty much.
Do you
Yeah.
go back to stock whenever you have to go in for smog, or do you just?
Oh yeah. So how do I say this not incriminatingly? So
If
so
one
basically,
were to do this.
so yeah, if one did not want to go back to stock, there are people that run smog shops that you can get in contact with
Right.
for vehicles like this that will never pass. And if you if you pay them the right amount,
A nominal fee.
they make it go away. But
See, that's the California I like.
Yeah,
I mean, because when you think of Southern California, that's like freaking car guy, hot rodder
oh yeah,
epicenter, man. And it just sucks to hear that they're freaking strangling that. That's like, I don't know. That's synonymous with Southern California
Yeah.
lifestyle.
yeah, and I think like a lot of the whole like we've been having a rash of the whole like people closing down the freeway because they're doing donuts on the freeway and shit like that.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I mean, like in one aspect, it's hysterical, but at the other aspect is like that's what like is drawing that attention from the police to us.
Right.
And so I mean, but that's what you get. I mean, like modified cars, it's a rebellious activity. Like I've never met a car guy that was like,
I know. It's like,
I have a full bolt-on Speed 3, and the dude's like, a tie-wearing insurance salesman who like goes home and drinks beer and watches TV and goes to bed. Like I've never met that guy. Like you know what I mean? The guy is always like, yeah, I race mountain bikes, I rock climb, I race skateboards, I race motorcycles, and this is my
that's
car.
what attracts us to it because it's rebellious. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like, it's like drifting. Everybody gets into drifting because you have this dream of just sliding through intersections.
Oh yeah.
And then once you get into drifting, you're like, no, man, that's irresponsible. We got to take it to the track. But it's a constant whatever. It's yin and yang. That's what brings us all in is because it's badass.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
It's
so.
yeah.
let's kind of shift focuses. So we've had the Focus and the Fiesta ST in the spotlight.
Put the scissors down.
Right. So, you didn't go the ST route. You chose the Mazda Speed 3 for your personal.
It shows him.
Pleasure. So let's go in on why you chose the Speed 3 versus the.
Oh man, gonna do me dirty like that and call me out. Okay, so truth be told, all right, I'm not a fanboy. I've never been a fanboy of anything outside of an MR2 and Suzuki's. That's it. Suzuki Sidekicks and Samurais. Outside of that, the only car I've ever fanboyed about is an MR2. I happened to own a Mazda 3 in 2009. And unfortunately, I didn't know enough about cars to know that the Speed 3 was coming out, the second generation. And I got hooked in with the Speed community, even though I had a Mazda 3. So when it came time for me to get a different car, I went to go buy a Speed 3, not because I was a fanboy, not because I think the Speed 3 is a great car. In actuality, like I'm sure like somebody's gonna be offended by this. I think the Speed 3 is largely an inferior car in its segment. It doesn't have traction. It doesn't have an overly nice interior. It doesn't ride nice. It's a boat to push through corners. I sold my Speed 3. I don't really like it was a reliable car. It got me from point A to point B. I had a lot of fun modifying it. I wouldn't say it's a particularly enjoyable car to modify. But I got into it because that's kind of what I knew. And then this, a couple of people were like, "Oh, well, the Focus ST, it's like a Ford Speed 3." And this is probably where somebody will get offended. But I've been a Japanese car guy my whole life, since I can remember. And I was like, Ford, are you kidding me? Found on road dead? No way, no thanks. Not signing up for that shit. Like, I want my car to actually last, And so, like, I had this whole mentality. And then it was also like, Ford, oh, you mean the people that knocked off the Speed 3? Like, you're kidding me? And truth be told, I wouldn't have bought a Speed 3 if I had more money. If I had more money, I would have bought a WRX. The 2011 through 2014 WRX and STR are like some of my favorite cars ever built. But I would have bought one of those. I just didn't have enough money, so the option was between a Focus ST and Fiesta ST and Speed 3. Now, oddly, I didn't pick the Fiesta ST, and I'm really not sure why, because I've always loved the car. And I knew the Fiesta ST was coming. I bought mine in 2013, so I knew it was there. I'm not sure why I didn't. Probably some Ford bias that I had. Looking back on it, my girlfriend hates Fiesta STs, like absolutely hates Fiesta STs. And every time I'm like, "Oh, it's a Fiesta ST. I love that. I want to sell my Sidekick and go buy a Fiesta ST." And she's always like, "No, it looks like a shoe." So I guess I got lucky that way. But yeah, I bought a Speed 3 because basically because it was like home. I knew the chassis. I knew how to make it go fast. But looking back on it, there were so many better options that I could have picked, and I just did what I did. I don't have a regret for buying it. I just don't have a whole lot of, so I'm not sitting there saying like, "Oh, Speed 3 is the best thing ever." Between the two, the Focus ST I think is a chassis and suspension wise, I think it's a better vehicle.
The Focus.
The rear suspension, the Focus is a lot better designed than the Speed, as far as like the way things are mounted, and the rigidity is a little bit higher, not a significant amount, but it is higher from the factory. I think the other thing, though, that people don't look at is the aftermarket support as well as the community. By and large, the Speed community is a very harsh group of people. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. You just have to have thick skin if you're going to be involved in that community. And as such, they didn't get a whole lot of aftermarket support, and they still don't really retain a large aftermarket support because the community is very hard on vendors. And that's good. That weeds out a lot of really bad vendors, but it kind of narrows that waters. Whereas the Focus ST, if you came up with some crackhead idea to run some weird configuration on a Focus ST, there's someone out there that would think that's the coolest thing in the Focus ST and want to have it on their car. And so it breeds this community of people that are that aren't all thinking the same.
Yeah.
And they want something else. And so that's the other reason why I think the Focus ST is more of the superior choice between the two, is because it has large aftermarket support. The development is it's not slowing down right now. I'm in communication with a lot of other vendors and designers and manufacturers, and I'm telling you right now, there's some crazy shit that's about to like that gets mentioned to me that's coming out, and it's like every month there's something new. Whereas the speed community, it's a lot slower with its progression.
Right.
And if you look at even how quickly the chassis developed, so like I know there's going to be some debate somewhere about how Justin Vaughn didn't set a 10-second quarter mile time with his Focus ST because there's no video. But I know Justin personally, and I believe him. So Justin hit a 10-second quarter mile, and the Speed 3 was just starting to get there. And so it's like one of those things of the Focus developed quicker because it had a lot more support on it than the Speed. And I'm sure there's a Speed guy out there that's going to flame me and roast me for saying that. But
Sure.
that's my personal opinion after watching both communities over the course of the last, 7-8 years.
Yeah. Well, and hey, like our designer guy has a Speed 3, and
Yeah.
he's funny because he's just like, I don't know, man, I just like it. He's
Yeah.
like, I had a Speed 3, and then he went and got a Bug-Eye WRX, had some other stuff, and went back to a Speed 3. He's like, I just like it. And that's okay, man. A car doesn't have to be like, like I was like that about a DSM forever. This was back in the day, when there were still street cars, and dailies and stuff. But it was the same thing, man. But it was good at one thing, just ripping tires and, but it was fun. It was just a fun car.
I'm not like trying to knock the Speed 3 at all because there's a lot of people in that community that are doing some really cool things, and there's and the car itself, like personally, I like the Gen 1s better than the Gen 2. I happen to have a Gen 2, but the first generation Speed 3s are like there's something that like that car really attracted me because the Mazda Protege hatchback, the MP5, was like my first like foray into cars like growing up, where I was like, that car is so cool. And
it's
I just
funny
thought
how that car had so many people like that, man.
Yeah, and then like the Speed 3 came out, and I was like, wow, it's like a refined like version of the MP5.
Yeah.
And so like I don't think there's a hatchback out there that even gets close. Maybe the like 2011 through 14 STI hatchback, but there really isn't a hatchback out there, for me at least, that does quite what that first generation Speed 3 did. And the sound that the Speed 3 makes is just like, it's an intoxicating exhaust noise. Like I love it. Like
very
they respond amazingly well to power adders too. Like I've never seen a car that did that. Like, and so it's like, I'm not trying to dig on Speed 3s. It's just my personal opinion is if you're going to modify a car and you're looking for that front wheel drive, full size hatchback type thing, I would recommend the Focus ST over the Speed 3.
Yeah.
I've noticed just throughout our conversation, there's been a lot of Mazda talk, and even just non-sports cars Mazda makes are attractive in like their own way, that people are, and Mazda is infectious, honestly. Like, okay, so I have my Focus ST here, but I also have this little shitty brown Miata.
Oh yeah.
Through the community, first off, like you said, the Speed community does not have like the kindest following. The Mazda community, the Miata community by itself is the same way. The Miata community is like, if you are not running BCs and you are not not scraping the ground, you are not okay. Like in any shape or form. You have the stance guys, and then you have the track guys.
Yeah, you have stance guys, and then you have dad.
So other than that, since I've been associated with these people, everybody that's thinking about their next car, because at some point you need something more than a Miata, to drive. At some point, it's going to get to that point, and nobody wants to go outside of Mazda. They're like, if they go Miata, they go to a Speed 3, or they go to something similar to
the one that I've seen is the Mazda 6. A lot of the Speed 3 guys will have a Speed 3. They've dailied it for a long time, and then they're taking it to like the next level, and they're going more like track oriented only with it. And they usually end up buying the new 6, which, like, man, that new Mazda 6, that's a stunning car. Like, it looks good, it rides nice. Like,
the new 6 with the turbo.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play with one yet.
Pretty damn impressive for the price
Yeah?
and what you get and everything. And like you said, it's a stunning. Whoever is designing for Mazda is freaking killing it. And whoever is making their engines is getting there. Like, you know, like, but like every one we drive with the magazine, I'm always just like, what? Like, God, I think, dang, the design inside and out, like the interior is like, yes, man. It's like, it's trim and minimal, but like it's enough and it's sporty, you know. It's like, I don't know, man. I feel like the Mazda CX-3, I don't get it. The Mazda CX-5 makes perfect sense and is a real contender. The Mazda 6, no, until they started putting the turbo in, and now all of a sudden it's a contender.
See, I feel like Mazda's biggest problem is it's like itself. Like, so Mazda shoots itself in the foot. Like, I've watched them do it time and time again.
You were telling me the Sky Active story. I don't remember it exactly, but
like the biggest one that kills me is like the Speed 3. They discontinue it, and then a couple years later, there's talk about another Speed 3, like a third generation Speed 3, and it's all coming leaked out of Mazda. And so like the Speed 3 community is like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, you know, we're all ready for it. And so like a Mazda spokesperson comes out and says that Mazda's not going to do another Speed because they're mature now.
Yeah.
And like, I have never seen such an enraged group of people. Like, you can cut the Focus ST, and if you think that was an enraged group of people, the Speed 3 community like lost their damn mind when they said that, because they're like, oh, I'm not mature just because I like having fun. I'm not mature. Like, what are you saying? Wow, you lost me as a follower. And yeah, I mean, like, as a Speed owner, that kind of hurt. I'm like, I mean, shoot, dude. But like, see, I'm a business owner. Like, I'm a mature guy, more or less, kind of. Okay, probably not, but like, I'm getting there. And like, you know, you're gonna.
You don't know me, Mazda.
Yeah, you don't know me. I rock climb. I'm responsible. But you know, you hurt that hurts to hear. It's like the Speed 3 wasn't an irresponsible car; it was an irrational car. It wasn't irresponsible.
Yes, perfect. Like,
perfectly
said.
Good,
and to me,
like it was ludicrous.
Having driven like, you know, having driven the Mazda 3 without the Speed, there's no place for the Mazda 3. It was the same thing as the CX-3, where I was like, but this car is not less expensive per se than an ST or even a GTI, yet it's got vastly less horsepower. It looks like it, like you look at it and you go, wait, it's nothing. You know, it's just a sedan in a world where nobody wants sedans. You know, it's like, if it doesn't, how can Mazda come to the table without a damn turbo in their freaking hatchback? You know, like,
they're their own worst enemy. There's somebody there's some bean counter out there in
apparently
Mazda
that's
just like, how am I going to screw this company up with this new car? This CX-3 looks sick. Yeah. Let's put slow in it.
And apparently they went to dinner with Ford and shared their bad ideas.
Speaking of Mazda and going back to the whole Speed 3 thing, tell me why, if I'm scrolling through Craigslist, I'm seeing the first generation Speed 3s selling in decent condition for like $2,500.
Are they really that cheap?
So in California, a decent condition Speed 3 is like 5 to 6, and a Gen 2 in decent condition can get out to like 12. It's actually the market for the Speed was weird. So I only know this market because I was actively trying to sell my Mazda when this occurred. But they were holding their value pretty well. So like my Speed 3 was holding at like 16 grand when I was going to sell it, and I was like, sick. Like I was hoping to use that for a down payment on my house. And so I was like, that's perfect, that's great. And then like I decided to sell my car, and it was like everyone decided to sell their car for nothing at that exact moment. And like the price dropped. I had that thing up for sale for a year. I'm not even exaggerating. One whole year, and it took me to sell that car. And I finally sold it for like, I think 11 grand, which was like not much more than I owed. So the first generation's even worse. I kind of feel like it kind of, again, someone's going to want to beat my ass over this one, but like, I kind of feel like it hit the SRT4 thing where it was like, it's a very powerful, burly, rambunctious front-wheel drive car in a world that wants all-wheel drive and refinement.
Right.
And so, like if you're like, the Speed 3 builds like horsepower and torque really well, but if you're wanting to put that to the ground, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm sorry, you can put every brace I make on that car, you can put an upgraded limited slip differential and a set of like R-Comp tires on it, and it's still going to have problems.
Yeah.
And so I think it's that thing of like, people know that, like, it's one of those cars that it doesn't. I feel like it struggles to find its niche. You can't really build a purpose-built race car out of a Speed 3. The first generation is getting to the age where you don't want to daily it, because the motors tend to be, run hard, put away wet, and it wasn't a motor that was designed to be run hard and put away wet. It's kind of a more fragile motor. And so I think that's kind of what happens with the Speed 3, is it just is kind of falling into that, like, whether like an old DSM, you would pick up like a GSX. Like, you're not picking up a GSX because you have this like fantasy of like daily driving it. You know that you're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
And if you do, you're 16.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that.
Yeah.
But you're buying it because you want to gut it, put a cage in it, and then go run some stupid times. Like, that's what you want to do. And I don't think the Speed 3. I think the only way that people will do that is if the price is low, which is, I think, driven the price down dramatically.
Yeah.
So, kind of switching gears a little bit, I want to know what fuels your motivation. Like, how did you become a car guy? You said you became a car guy in like 2009. So it wasn't from an early age that you were a car guy.
It was, but it wasn't. So, like, I remember being little. My dad's a car guy. More of a motorcycle guy, but he was body man and mechanic forever, and he has currently has a 34 Ford that he's putting an LS swap in. I know, total like sacrilege there, but it's pretty rad. I'm not gonna lie.
Doesn't bother me.
But anyway, so he's like, I remember driving around with him, and like I would see these MR2s, and I was like, Dad, what is that? And I was like, is that a Ferrari? I'm like 5 years old, 6 years old. Yeah. And he's like, no, it's a Toyota. And I was like, oh, what?
The hell kind of Toyota is that?
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, no, but they're mid-engine. I was like, this is so cool. And like the concept of owning a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, like, always, I love mid-engine rear-wheel drive.
Dude, I've always wanted one. I still want one. I've wanted one for, no kidding, I've wanted one for like 25 years now.
They're dirt cheap. They'll always be dirt cheap, and you should definitely buy one.
Yeah.
And so I'd followed the whole MR2. Like, I was actively watching Auto Trader, which at the time was what you did. I'd buy an Auto Trader every like month or so, and I would keep an eye on. I was like 10, keep an eye on the prices of MR2s and how much money I would need to save when I was 15, and so I could get one. And so I was always into cars, but not severely. And then I got into racing downhill skateboards, and then
did you really?
Oh yeah, man. Like I used to race with
badass.
Yeah, like it's funny, like you go into like you see on TV like guys like Andrew Mercado or Misha Urban and those guys. I literally raced every weekend with them up in GMR. They probably wouldn't remember me. I was a nobody. I wasn't very good at it. But like I was enough to hang, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've been trapped at like 64, 65 miles an hour on a skateboard.
Nope.
Dude, hell yeah, you need to do it. It's a great feeling. But yeah, so I used to do that, and then it kind of got to the point where it got really dangerous. It's kind of where I'm at with climbing right now, where I'm kind of realizing how dangerous it is. And so I was kind of
I've gotten too good at this.
Yeah, like it got real, and I started looking at the next thing. And my best friend, he and I don't really talk anymore for some other circumstances, but like mad respect to this kid. Dylan is like he's the next level kid. Anyway, I always call him a kid. He's like 2 years younger than me, but he's like my little brother. We used to call him my little brother. And so yeah, Dill had an Evo, and he's Mr. Evo. Like literally his initials are DSM. And so he breathes Evos, and I loved it. Like I thought it was cool. I rode in a GSX when I was younger, and I thought that was like the coolest car in the world. And then
it was.
Yeah, it seriously was. He's like, I got the boost turned up to 16 PSI. I thought it was the coolest shit in the world.
Dude, that's how we do it.
But then I had this other friend that was he had a '04 STI, and I'll never forget it. We were one day after work. He's like, "Hey, let's go for a drive," and I was like, "All right." So I hopped in the car and we went down the 15 freeway at 3 in the morning after work at like, no joke, we were 145, and like that feeling when he came into boost in like third gear, and I was just like, "This is it." Like I know what I'm about. Like I in that like 5 second period of time, I knew my future. You know what I mean? Like this is what I have to do from here on out for the rest of my life. I will be doing this. And so yeah, we did that, and then so I started hanging around Dylan about cars instead of skating, which we used to skate together. And he was like, "Oh, this is that." And I bought my Mazda 3. He gave me a bunch of shit because it was a 3 and not a Speed 3, and I should have bought an Evo. And I hung out with the Evo guys, and I remember asking them like, "Hey, what should I do to make my Mazda faster?" And this one guy, his name's Alan. He's actually a really famous guy in the Evo community. He's built a lot of very high horsepower cars. He's a tuner. Alan slowly turned and looked at me, and he was like, "All right, I'll tell you how to make your Mazda 3 fast." He's like, "It's real easy. You take your keys, you drive your car up to South Coast Mitsubishi, you walk in the door, hand them the keys, and you buy yourself an Evo, and you buy yourself a real car." And then he turned around and then completely ignored me for the rest of the night. Like looking back, like I was so offended, like it hurt so bad. And looking back on it, like, damn, that was the funniest shit I think anyone ever said to me. But I totally deserved it. That was what got me into the whole car community. It's like these guys that were doing, everyone was exploring, everyone was going somewhere no one else had been before. They were pushing limits. They were trying different things. There was the guys that I hung around, like we didn't have money, so we would like modify with what we could, and not like I'm gonna plasti dip shit. Like we modified things, like we cut exhausts, built intakes from like AutoZone parts, the Spectre shit. We did all the dumb shit that you should never do. And it was just, I don't know, it was cool. And from that point on, that was it. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't get away from it, but it was always there. Like cars were always there. I've always been a tinkerer. I've always been an entrepreneur, and this just gave me the outlet for it. Like, I mean, if I was into airplanes, I'd be welding airplane parts. I love aqua stuff, so anything like boats and stuff like that. So I'm sure somewhere down the line I'm gonna building boat parts, like that shit's gonna happen. Like but just cars, there's so much you can do. Like there's I could spend all day working on this car and never run out of things to do.
Tell us a little bit about your MR2, because like I said, I've been following you on social media for a pretty good while now, so I've seen the build from pretty much start to finish, I think, watching it over Instagram. And just seeing it on your social media, you're almost like emotional with it. You can definitely tell that specific build, that MR2, means the world to you. So tell us why. Like, what is it so special?
So I'm kind of like, I've had this weird thing because of my business to where I'm very dedicated to business before everything else. And so I've had, my Speed 3 had bolt-ons. Like I said, it was full bolt-ons, but it wasn't like a big turbo. And I've never really had that car that I felt like I should invest money in. And so I had this MR2 before. I had a white MR2 turbo. I bought it in 2012 at like the last day of 2012. I sold my Mazda 3 for business reasons, and I needed money. So I bought this beater MR2, and I proceeded to do everything wrong, like just everything wrong. I knew how to build suspension parts. I didn't know how to, properly put parts on for building power. And so I just ruined that car. Like I gutted it. I was building a race car, and even though it was my only car, and I gutted it. I welded the pinch clamps on it. I went through and just eBay downpipe, eBay turbo manifold, like just everything you should not do. And then I was racing my friend's Golf R. Still hate Kevin for that, but whatever. He's a good guy. He has an S2000 now, and we work together on that. But anyway, Kevin's the reason. I was racing him one night down his back road, and I was trying to keep up with the Golf R and my MR2. That was just this ratchet piece of crap. 200,000 miles. And so 16 psi is the end of your fueling on an MR2. After that, there's no fuel. Um, and I looked over at my boost gauge, and it was like bouncing at 20. And that was the top of my boost gauge. So it was past 20 psi. And I had done that a few times in the past, and I didn't think anything of it. And like sometimes it would just bog really hard, and I couldn't figure out why it was doing that. That was the knock sensor retarding timing because I was knocking hard.
Right.
And so one day I pulled the ring lands out of the oil pan, and that was the end of that motor. And so anyway, long story short, I blew that thing up. I ruined that car. And I look back on it, and it really never sat well with me. There aren't a whole lot of these cars left.
Yeah.
I know earlier I said they're everywhere, but they're everywhere for a used car from the early 90s.
Yeah.
But there's not a whole lot left, and I ruined one of those. And so it really hurt me. I just I'm a historical person, and that bothered me. And so I picked this one up after years of like, my girlfriend had broken up with me, and she didn't like MR2s, and you shouldn't buy one. And so I was like, you're right.
Girl that doesn't like Fiestas?
No comment, but yeah, we got back together. We got back together, and subsequently she says she likes MR2s. I'm working on the Fiestas for
right.
Willie. I promise, Willie, I'll get her to come around.
Like, dude, let's be honest. Girls should not like Fiestas. Like, my wife hates it. I don't even think she doesn't even know what it is still. She's like, that red car. That's all she calls it, you know? Like, well, you could sell that red car. I certainly would, you know, but
my focus a mom car one more time, I'm gonna lose my damn mind.
But an MR2 is a sexy car.
Exactly. And so like I snagged this one when we were broken up for a little bit, and it had 238,000 miles on it. I'm sure they were all highway miles.
Yeah, of course.
And I picked it up in the ghetto of San Bernardino, which, if you don't know, is like kind of like the armpit of California. Like, it's just a shithole. So this thing was just beat. It had dents in it, but like all in all, it was a pretty straight car. And it was the non-turbo model, which was important to me to do. I knew I wasn't going to keep a stock motor in it. And so I picked it up, and I took it home, and I loved it immediately. It was everything I remembered about my MR2 without any of it breaking all the time, because my old one was just a bucket of bolts. And I knew something special was going to happen with it. Like, I just felt it. And so I was like, I'm going to do a 4th gen 3S GTE turbo swap into it, and I'm going to build that. But something hit me around that same time. Kevin had his S2000, and he kept it all motor. And Kevin's kind of like he's like a big brother hero figure for me. I really, really look up to that guy. And I was talking to him, and he's like, "No, man." He's like, "Too much power for my chassis. I leave it all motor because I can drive it in better that way, and it's more fun." And it was just like all these gears like clicked into place of like, oh, you mean you don't have to have a big turbo Evo?
But no, it has to be turbo.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, like this happened, you know? And so I discovered this motor. It's called a 3S GE Beams Red Top. And they were put in the MR2s. They were also put in the Celicas. A lot of them were in the Celicas. There were only 1,000 in the MR2s, and they were only in Japan. And then about half of those came with an S54 limited slip transmission. And so I was drawn to it. It's a really sexy motor. Like, it's got the red intake manifold, red valve cover. It's got variable valve timing. It's a 200 horsepower, 7,200 RPM red line, all motor, 150 foot-pound torque, screamer. It's basically like Toyota's weird B16s were out, but the K20 was coming.
Yeah.
And so Toyota started playing with VVTi at that time. And so I snagged one for like, I got one for $1,000, like, no joke. And like, these things are really rare, and they should have sold for more. And he didn't. The guy that was selling it, like the importer, like was like, "Oh, we have an MR2 Beams Red Top. It's like $1,200." And I was like, "Cool." Went down, picked it up, loaded it up in a truck, took it home immediately.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think I was ever going to actually put it in the car. It was just kind of one of those pipe dreams.
Yeah.
And it happened one day, you know, like my dad and I sat down, and he helped me put it in. My dad, I'm not a mechanic by any means. Don't ever have me work on your car. I can build your braces. I can weld like a mofo, but I cannot do mechanic stuff. And so my dad helped me put it in there, and it was a really fun weekend. We got it in there, we got it running, and and then I wrapped it. My dad and I did the body work on it. We wrapped it, and I made sure to you'll probably kill me for this, but like I went through and like everything is authentic Toyota, TRD, Toms, all authentic Japanese parts. I know it hurts
Bunch
to
of
say
damn
it.
people that don't advertise in American tuner magazines. Yeah, appreciate
Exactly.
it.
And yeah, exactly. Definitely people who don't support S3 magazine, they're assholes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did that, and I kept it, stock airbox, stock everything I can. And it's just like it's a magical car, it just does everything for me.
This was going so well.
I
For
I just
the
shit
first
all over
hour
it.
and 15 minutes, and now I just want to get off of here and go see if I can find an MR2. Dude, because I am just old enough, right? Like I'm 38, so I don't remember those came out in what, 91 or something. Was it
91 was the year was 90 when they came out, but the model year was 91 for the SWs.
Okay, so yeah, I was 10 or 11 years old. I was still living in Jacksonville, Florida, coastal town. So it was all about T-tops and two doors. And dude, Florida's all about I want yellow, I want turquoise. It was always the cool colors, Whereas I'm in Atlanta now, and it's all I want, how many shades of gray do you have? I want the lighter gray. I don't, it's seriously, I drive around and I lose my shit because every car is black or gray. But yeah, so that car to me is so nostalgic, I so bad want yellow, red, teal, that turquoise, that deep turquoise that they had or something like that.
SMG.
Cause I don't know, man, it was right on that time where right as the 90s hit, it's all of a sudden the angles were gone and the cars got smooth, and it was it was so obvious to me, at least as a 10-year-old, as it was happening. I was like, what is happening? This is the turn of the decade. Is this how the world works? Whenever a decade changes, everything changes. It was insane. And that car was just one of those that stuck out. Ironically, another one that makes no sense by today's standards was the Geostorm.
Oh God!
The little trackers and shit, because they were always yellows and turquoise, and the bumpers got big on the Storm, and it was damn, the windows were sealed. There were no more rain gutters and stuff.
Don't knock the Geo stuff, man. I daily drive a '98 Suzuki Sidekick Sport, which is a Japanese version of a tracker.
Of a Geo, yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. Anyone listening, if you ever need a cheap form of transportation that you can just kick the ever living shit out of,
literally, when I used to valet cars, one of the girls that worked there had one, and her hood was kind of caved in, and I was like, man, what happened to your hood? And she's like, oh, it's nothing. Boom! And it's it was kind of like a barrel. It just went boom and went back in place. She's like, yeah, we sit on it or whatever. And
my radiator cracked a couple months ago. I was up in Mammoth, which is 5 hours away from home. My radiator cracked. And I'm not even exaggerating. I didn't even think about it. I was like, my radiator's cracked. I drove 5 hours home in sweltering heat, and I got home and I was it's pouring coolant. I didn't put coolant in on the way down. I ran it out of coolant on the way home. Obviously it had enough to run and not overheat.
Yeah.
And I got home and I was like, I should fix that. It was $48 for a new radiator, and I swapped it in an hour.
That is awesome.
And there's not many cars that are like that, where you really only need a 12, a 10, and a 14 to get shit done.
Hondas.
Yeah.
I had a friend in high school. Shout out Cameron. He's in the Navy now. But his family is a 300ZX enthusiast. So
I'm sorry. That's a lot of wrenching.
They give up Z days in Canada and everything. Yeah, they said if you're gonna have, would be prepared to work on it. But he bought so he was doing an engine swap because he bought 2 wrecked ones and a shell of a good one. Make a 300ZX. So he bought a Geo tracker, and he loved it. It had bright baby blue wheels and white. I mean, it was authentic 90s. And he drove to school one day, and the whole front end was caved. And I was like, dude, what'd you do? He was like, it was fucking raining, and I went around the corner. And the wheels were turned, but it went straight right into my damn tree. He said, so I just backed it up and parked it. He said, radiator's fucked, but it'll be fine.
Yeah, my friends asked me if you're ever poor, what would you buy? And I was like, this is back when I had the Speed 3, and I was like, not saying I'm poor now, but I'm getting there. So I was like, he's like, if you're poor, what would you buy? And I was like, immediately I was like, Suzuki Sidekick or Samurai. I used to have a Samurai, by the way.
Yeah.
I was like, Suzuki Sidekick or Samurai, and they're like, why? And I was like, this is a real simple solution. Look at what people drive in third world countries. There's a reason why they're driving it. And I was like, so a Toyota Hilux and a Suzuki, they're always over there. Why? Because they're like, oh, got some bubble gum and duct tape. That'll fix that. We're good to go for another 10,000 miles. My transmission makes this grinding noise. I haven't fixed it. My motor, I bought this thing a year ago. My motor has, I've put 15,000 miles on it since then. Every oil change since I got it, it has metal shavings that are like, half the size of a dime. And it's been doing that. Doesn't make any weird noises, and it keeps going. And like, I mean, I'll swap it. It's only like $1,000 for a new motor, but like, it's just, it keeps going. And I think I'll probably like end up selling the car before it actually needs a motor. Like,
Right.
But it's like these huge metal shavings. If that happened to like this MR2, I'd lose my shit. Like, I'd be like, oh my God, this motor's done. But it keeps going.
It's all right. It's just cleaning itself.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
For a long time, so this is a weird story. So I've always been a car guy, right? But back in high school, okay, Wooly knows this. I am in the middle of Podunk-ass Alabama. That's where I live. So in high school,
That's where I live.
200 people in my graduating class, right? So I thought I was this country bumpkin, dude.
Ding, 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 ding.
I had a 1998 Z71 and with, big mud tires on it, brush guard and everything. I love that truck. But I was still a car guy. I put 13 grand in that thing before I hydroplaned and totaled it, right? So, of course, they gave me $4,000 for it. But, so after that, I get another truck, get an F-150, and then it starts crapping out on me. So I'm like, well, crap, I need something. I'm going to college. I roll up to the dealership that my family buys all of their Fords from because they only buy from one person. And he gets, well,
Meanwhile,
like, you got this thing. I'm like, well, that'll do. So
You look like a damn ricer. You probably like this shit. I heard the ST makes it faster.
So I buy it, and I don't know what it is. I end up on the forum I mentioned earlier, ST drivers, and I'm like, whoa, people actually like drive these things, and I fell in love, of course. So back when I had the other truck, at the time I was like, I'm gonna keep this truck. I need a daily driver, right? Buy a Civic, '97 Civic EX 5-speed, biggest piece of shit I've ever owned in my entire life. I could not keep it running for more than 2 days.
oh God.
So I start looking, and I meet a buddy that has a Miata, and my entire life growing up in Alabama, you're like, you pussy, you don't want no Miata. That's a gay man's car.
oh God.
You're trained as an Alabamian citizen that you'd never want a Miata until you meet someone from out of state that has one, and then you're like, hey, I can swing it, So I sell the Civic, I buy my Miata, and it just seems to keep going. It burns more oil than I can keep in it, and it leaks a lot. I'll probably mop up the puddle when I pull it out in the morning, but the stupid thing just keeps going.
Yep.
Well, I take that back. One time I went into turning. Okay,
Except that time it didn't.
That wasn't true at all. That was what I wanted to happen.
Into my college for literally less than 3 minutes. I walked in, turned in an assignment, walked back out, no spark. I had to get it towed home. Still, to this day, I do not know why it lost spark. It just started sparking again one time. And so, but yeah, other than that, it just keeps on kicking. And I really want to try to blow it up. Wooly offered me his Fiesta stock turbo, and I have my Focus's intercooler. So I'm really debating just sending it, but who knows?
It's like my sidekick's the same thing. I got a sledgehammer. That sledgehammer I was talking about earlier that I bought, I keep that in my sidekick because that's my GM starter. Since Suzuki's owned by GM, And yeah, you just gotta bang on the side of the starter. every now and then because it won't start, especially in the post office parking lot when you're dropping off orders. I don't know why it always does it there, but hey, whatever. You hit it a few times with the hammer, and off we go.
One
I
time
bet you that looks fun.
Cracker Barrel the starter on the Miata went out, and I was like, Cracker Barrel. Do you have Cracker Barrels in California?
Oh my God, yeah. The closest one is like in Arizona and Nevada, but like holy shit, like as a Californian, like you make sure to stop at a Cracker Barrel on the way out of town or out of state. Like, those places are bomb.
So the starter goes out, and literally these people were like going to a wedding. There's like an entire family and this woman in a wedding dress standing outside, and I can't remember what it was. But they saw the starter went out, and I was beating on it with a crowbar that I kept in the trunk for occasions like that, and it would not start. So literally, I turned the ignition switch on, and like this entire family, including the woman in the wedding dress, are pushing my Miata off the Cracker Barrel parking lot so that I can roll start it.
Oh, hell
They
yeah.
were probably thinking, let's help this little gay boy get out of Alabama before he gets hurt. Like,
His sun's getting real low right now. Get out of here. Get out of here before the boys come out.
yeah. All right. Well, we're at what, an hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah.
You think that's good?
Quits.
I'm afraid on this old ass computer, if we keep talking, I'm just gonna like overdo my memory or freeze something up or something.
Well, I guess that about sums it up for. I'm sure we'll have you back just because you're you're a joy to have on the S3 podcast, and we can.
I appreciate it.
I'm trying.
I do apologize for how much I talk, so I'm sorry. Once you give me talk about cars,
dude,
I don't shut up.
It happens all the time. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else? Was there anything that you felt like, oh man, I got to say that before we leave? Nope.
You got me there.
I want to announce here, keep a lookout for S3 doing some more work with TB Performance in the future like we have done in the past. I don't want to give away the whole thing, but we have a plan on you taking the TB's parts on both the Focus and Wooley's Fiesta, taking it to North Carolina to the Tail of the Dragon and doing a little bit of some comparisons. So keep an eye out for that. If you really want to see what TB.
Speaking of that, I need to tell you guys. I actually got to ask you something after we're done with this. I got to ask you guys something about that particular plan of yours.
Yeah.
I've got some ideas for you. I was gonna see if you're down for.
Cool.
Well, you look like you're about to say something.
I was. Crash bars. You're doing crash bars.
Yeah. So that's the new one. I just released them for the Focus. The Fiesta will be coming in a couple of months. But the Focus ST and RS use the same part.
Wait. You said the Fiesta's coming in a couple months?
Yeah. So I heard from somewhere down the line. But
okay,
yes.
Cool.
I'm sure you will be inheriting one, as it were.
Dude, I want one so freaking bad. I got so excited when I saw you were making them, and I was like, "Damn it, Focus!"
I don't know why I didn't tell you when I was doing the R&D on it, because I've been working on it for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
But the Fiesta is definitely coming. Usually I release the Focus parts first, just because there's a larger number of those. But I don't like.
That's a smart thing to do.
I don't generally forget the Fiesta ST. Like I love the car, so even if it had like 2 people modifying it, I'd go make parts for it because I love it. So. Fiesta guys have been blowing me up.
It's such a game changer, like just for the looks of the car. You know, it puts it on a different level instantly.
I do have to say, anyone listening though, it is for off-road use only. My lawyer made me say that. I'm not responsible for any damages, anything related to it. It is replacing the OEM crash bar, and subsequently, God only knows what would happen if you get in an accident. I'm not an engineer. I mean, you guys heard me earlier, so good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
But if you're building a race car, it is a fantastic piece, and it looks absolutely dope as hell. I love it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
So be sure to check out Danny. Or I think what's your Instagram handle at TB Performance Products?
Yeah. At TB_performance_products, tbperformanceproducts.com.
I'm sure we'll have, Danny is sending out some goodies for the Focus. We're still filming stuff for that. We have a whole bunch of parts that some lovely companies have included for that. And then we're looking forward to seeing more of your crash bar development. And I'm sure Willie's going to be hounding you.
That's probably why I didn't tell him about it during R&D.
I'm sure he's going to be hounding you. Like I told Wooly that I wanted a roof rack and a cargo thing for my Focus, and literally the next week Wooly had one on his Fiesta. So
of course,
that was an accident.
Well.
No, yeah. That's because my buddy Anthony, we featured his Fiesta. He's got a big turbo Fiesta. He posted up. I knew he was trying to sell his little rack, and I was kind of lowballing him, and he was like, all right, yeah, come get it. But he lives even though he lives in the same city, it's freaking hour and a half away, So I just hadn't done it. And then he wanted some factory wheels and tires, and I was like, hey, bro, I have some of them. Let's make a trade. So yeah, now I got a big old cargo box on my car.
Shit.
It's cool looking though, but
it fits. It fits your style perfectly.
Yeah, that's like the kind of, I don't know, man. That's what attracted me to the car. It's like I said, I was having major nostalgic hot hatch fever, and I was like, man, I want a Fiesta. I want wings on wings. I want every wheel to be a different color. I want to bring back I want to be a racer again, it's just, It's an obnoxious car that you can't lose with, man, because, you run up on a Mustang or a Camaro or something and he beats you. Well, yeah, he should. But if he doesn't, if you catch him slipping, you never let him live it down. It's just, I don't know, man. I love the thing. All right, anyway, I guess that's good night. That'll be whatever, part 1. Like you said, we'll have you back. You're good at podcasting. You want to do this for me?
Hey, I mean, anytime you guys need me, let me know. I'm down. I like I said, I apologize for talking so much.
No, man, no.
We've seriously, because this is still new to S3 as far as the podcast goes. We're trying, we're still in our R&D stage, trying to figure out what we've got going on.
That's why I said, you want to do this for me? I'll just make a shirt that says Wooly. Nobody will know the difference.
Yeah, I mean, the hair, I look the same.
We'll get you one of those hats with dreads built in.
I'll have my roommate come and he'll talk for me. He's got dreads, so, I mean,
Hell
don't worry.
Anyways, I think the next, keep a lookout for the next podcast. I think we're going to be talking about, or Mike and Willie is going to be talking about sponsorships.
Yeah.
And then we're still hounding our Brada. Anthony from Brada Wills has said that he's supposed to be on here, but he keeps rain checking us, so we'll hound him some more. But other than that, anything else you want to add, Willie?
No. I'll see y'all.
All right.
All right. Later, guys.
Take it easy.